Thank you very much, everyone, for coming today. This is a very important point in the history of Hastings Park, and so we're very pleased to welcome all of you here today. Thank you to the press. We're very pleased that you're interested in this topic. We're here today for two main reasons. We are the Friends of Hastings Park, and I think we can say all of us here are friends of Hastings Park. But our little volunteer organization is here today with other community groups and organizations to explain the compelling legal case that we have to demonstrate that the Park Board should govern Hastings Park. We also want to demonstrate the wide support there is for Park Board governance of Hastings Park. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce a wide variety of speakers, 9, I believe, different speakers, who are going to speak on behalf of their organizations and why they think Hastings Park should be governed by the Park Board. I'm first going to introduce Sherry Brashears. Sherry is the representative of the Hastings Community Association, an association that represents 5,000 members who belong to our Hastings Community Center. Sherry?
Thank you, and thanks for giving me this opportunity to speak. I had an opportunity to represent my community at the Hastings Park/PNE Governance Review with the Stakeholders Advisory Group. I was really looking forward to this opportunity because this community loves this park. It's a special place for us, and we need parkland on the east side. Unfortunately, the Governance Review focused primarily on the business interests of the PNE. The staff report that resulted from that review is recommending continued PNE governance of the park. And the review really failed to consider the legal status of the park. Is it a park? That question was never answered. And can the city hand over a public park to a private corporation? What are the implications if our government chooses to start handing parks over to private entities? The city has an obligation under the Charter to allow Park Board to govern parkland. Hastings Park was given in trust in 1889 to the city as a public park. And under the Charter, the city has an obligation to allow Park Board to govern it. The proposed compromise, which was put forward at City Hall to carve the land up, to carve up the park into Park Board land and PNE land and allow Park Board to govern some of it and the PNE to govern other parts of it, is not acceptable. It does not solve the legal issue. So we feel that the Park Board needs to be in charge of all of the land. We don't want to get into a legal challenge on this issue. We feel that it is City Hall's, the City of Vancouver's obligation to investigate this legal issue and to come up with an answer about whether this actually is a park, and if so, they are obligated to give the park over to Park Board. Thank you.
Thanks. Next, I would like to introduce Angelo Holmes, who is the president of the Confratellanza organization. Did I get that? Okay. Thank you, Angelo. We're meeting here today in the Italian Gardens, and it's very important that the people who made this garden possible be able to speak to you today. So, Angelo, please come forward.
I live in the North Shore, and I was not aware of all of this. I was apprised of this less than 24 hours ago, and I think there would have been a bigger turnout from our community if we knew what was going on. Having said that, I just put some notes together on behalf of the Confratellanza Italo-Canadese, who I'm speaking of, and I am their president. The Italian community came together to create Il Giardino Italian Gardens in the heart of the Hastings, Sunrise, and Renfrew neighborhood. where many Italian immigrants settled and raised their families. The volunteer Italian Gardens Committee that was created included several prominent Italian families in 2000. The Aquilini family, who grew up over here, and the Mosconi families. Also, we have John Tatey, John Barbieri, who were members of that committee, and they told me that they raised upwards of about $500,000 in the year 2001. The committee raised these funds and organized in-kind donations of landscape design and landscaping and monuments for the garden. The Confratellanza donated $50,000 in the name of my late grandfather, the late Angelo Branca, who was a great figure in the East End of Vancouver. He was also a BC Supreme Court Justice. He was elevated to the Court of Appeal and was considered one of Canada's 10 greatest lawyers. And he served as Parks Board Commissioner from 1938 to 1940, the first, I think, Italian elected in the province, the first Italian-Canadian lawyer for many years in the province of British Columbia. The Italian Committee believed that the Parks Board, after the governance review, would maintain and govern Hastings Park, including Il Giardino. Earlier this week, it was brought to my attention, and the Confratellanza, that the P&E had renamed Il Giardino on their website as the Italian Gardens, P&E Italian Gardens. This is very disrespectful to our community, who worked so hard to give this park a name that reflects our Italian heritage, culture, and contribution to the park. Under the governance of the P&E, Il Giardino has been poorly maintained. I've heard from some of our people, removal of graffiti, plant and grass maintenance has no regular schedule. Our community has filed complaints about the state of the park. Also, in the early planning of Il Giardino, our vision was for the park that would be accessible to all of the community, for the Italian community, and all the people who enjoy free of charge. Currently, Il Giardino is gated off during the P&E, and the only way to gain access is to purchase admission to the fair. Also, this park has been rented for exclusive private events, limiting the community's access to Il Giardino for several months of the year. This is not to say that the P&E and El Giardino cannot coexist. I believe under the Parks Board governance this will be possible. We in the Confratellanza Italo-Canadese would like to see Il Giardino and all of Hastings Park governed by the Parks Board. And with me today I have past presidents John Barbieri, Gino Remigita, and Rudy Benora, and Lino Bragagnola, who was our president at the time. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Next we have Mary Filippelli, who is from the Hastings Park Conservancy. The Hastings Park Conservancy has been a long-standing organization in this community that has advocated for park space in this park. They're particularly concerned about the green spaces, the Italian gardens, the sanctuary, and so I welcome Mary Filippelli.
Thank you, Linda. Good morning. Thanks for everybody being here today. It's really nice to see the support from all the different groups. When I was at the City Hall meeting last week, and I heard speaker after speaker talk about what the P&E has done, and this is from our neighbors in this community that were concerned that there would be a demise of the P&E if the Parks Board took over. And I just want to ensure, or just want to relay my support that the P&E does stay and the fair does stay. That's not our intention. Our intention is to make a clear division between P&E taking care of the fair and playland and the Parks Board taking care of the land, governance of the land. So I, on behalf of the Hastings Park Conservancy, would like to see the Parks Board be the main governor of the entire property and not have the property cut up. Because if it gets to be broken up, there's going to be other problems that we haven't anticipated as yet, but they will appear. As to the care of it, who's responsible for different areas. Also, the sanctuary and its inhabitants has been a concern for the Conservancy. The Conservancy was not in favor of the fishing project. And it went ahead anyhow, and it has had some very detrimental effects on the inhabitants, the birds and the ducks, as been in the media. So we consider this a failed project, And we asked the PNE to discontinue, but in fact that's not going to happen because the PNE is going to continue having this during the fair. And we believe this is not acceptable because fishing in the sanctuary pond is not the right place for it to happen. It is a lovely project. The youth and the children, yes, they need to learn about respect for the environment and for fishing practices, but not in the sanctuary. It's not built for that. It doesn't lend itself for that. So also the Parks Board, there was claims made that the Parks Board would not be able to look after a multi-use facility or land. And this is so far from the truth. The Parks Board has done a wonderful job with Stanley Park and all its venues, and Queen Elizabeth Park and all its venues. So there is no reason not to give the Parks Board an opportunity to bring those successful practices into this parkland. So in closing, I urge City Hall to consider Parks Board as the governance for Hastings Parkland. Thank you.
Oh, yes. So President Robert Casanova from the Confratellanza. He is also here. He just forgot to mention his name. So it's wonderful to have so many people from the Italian Cultural Society here. Thank you very much for being here. We also have support from our elected representatives in Vancouver. Both our Member of Parliament, Libby Davies, and our MLA, Shane Simpson, are long-standing elected members of this area and know their communities well. And so we have today a statement. Unfortunately, both of them are not able to be here, but Rachel Garrick, Shane's constituency assistant, is here to read a statement that comes from both Libby and Shane. Rachel?
My name's Rachel Garrick, and I'm Shane Simpson's constituency assistant. And as Linda mentioned, I'm delivering this statement on behalf. I'm delivering this statement on behalf of Libby Davies, the MP for Vancouver East, and Shane Simpson, the MLA for Vancouver Hastings. We are sorry that we are unable to attend this event supporting Vancouver Board of Parks and Recreation administration and control of Hastings Park. We firmly believe a decision to put Hastings Park under Park Board jurisdiction would be in the best interest of the park, the community, and ultimately the city. We are all aware of the history of Hastings Park. We know that while David Oppenheimer, the second mayor of Vancouver, originally viewed the park as an east side version of Stanley Park, it instead evolved into a home for the PNE, horse racing, and for many years the Vancouver Canucks. All of those purposes are valued by many Vancouverites and British Columbians. However, the Canucks are now gone, and we believe a majority of the local community, quite rightly, are demanding greater access to and use of Hastings Park for more conventional recreational park purposes. The legitimacy of these demands has been acknowledged through the greening that has taken place recently. It is now time to take the next step. While the PNE is very good at its core purposes, facilities and event management, and the annual fair, they have proven less than adequate on more traditional parks and recreation initiatives. It has become clear that PNE decisions regarding the site have consistently been made through the lens of what is best for the PNE and its operations. This has led to numerous usage decisions that have not reflected community interests. It has also meant that there have been essentially no investments in programming for community use at Hastings Park. It is time for a change. It is time for a recognition that Hastings Park is in fact a park, and as such should be under the jurisdiction of the Parks Board, like every other park in Vancouver is. This does not diminish the importance of the PNE or horse racing. They both have a significant role in any future park management structure to ensure their interests are considered. However, it is time to acknowledge that political jurisdiction and ultimate decision-making needs to rest with the people we elect to take care of our parks, the Vancouver Park Board Commissioners. We urge City Council to make this fundamental decision. Turn Hastings Park over to the Board of Parks and Recreation so we can get on with a future for Hastings Park that works for everyone. Thank you. And I will...
Now I want to also introduce Jeremy McCall, who is from Nature Vancouver. Nature Vancouver has been very supportive of our efforts in making Hastings Park more like a park. Jeremy, welcome.
Thank you, Linda. I'm a director of Nature Vancouver, and I also chair the conservation section, which has been very concerned about what's happening here. Hastings Park is just that, a park. And as such, the preservation of its natural values is at least as important as anything else that occurs within the park. For many years, Nature Vancouver volunteers have made strenuous efforts to preserve, protect and enhance the natural values of Hastings Park. A number of our members are also members of the Hastings Park Conservancy. These volunteer efforts have included nature education through displays and nature walks, bird counts and other species surveys, as well as advocacy for nature in the park. A number of our members also live in areas adjacent to the park, and they have been very concerned at the low priority given to the natural features of the park. So our members are very familiar with the way the park has been managed and occasionally mismanaged, and they are convinced that management by the Park Board will be the most effective way to preserve the park's natural values. We do not consider that such management would be detrimental to the interests of the P&E or to any other tenants. Nature Vancouver therefore wishes to be on record as recommending strongly that the Vancouver Park Board be given the primary authority for the management of this important park. And I'll close by saying that if the City of Vancouver wants to be seen as emphasizing green values, it can do no better than authorize the Park Board to govern the park.
On May 27th this year, there was a very important decision made by the Park Board. And that was a unanimous decision on the part of the Park Board that they should indeed be the governing body of Hastings Park. I want to let you know that I heard today from Sarah Blythe, Chair of the Park Board, who unfortunately is not able to be with us today. But we are very pleased that Melissa DiGenova, who is a commissioner on the Park Board, is here to speak to us today about the unanimous decision of the Park Board and why they should be in charge of Hastings Park. Melissa?
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, members of the community and the media, and I'd also like to acknowledge that my fellow commissioner, John Cooper, is here with us today, and also former Park Board Commissioner Anita Romaniak is also here, so thank you for being here. On May 27th of this year, a motion was brought forward and passed by the Park Board. This motion concluded, and I will read the exact language of the motion, that the Park Board urged Council to support the Park Board governance option as outlined in the Hastings Park Governance Review because it's the best option for the following reasons. First, to increase public access to green space and recreational use. To ensure transparency and accountability in decision making. To ensure compliance with City and Park Board initiatives such as the Greenest City Action Plan, the Urban Forest Management Plan, the Biodiversity Strategy, and the Vancouver Sports Strategy. And last but certainly not least, to improve the care and maintenance of all green space in Hastings Park. On July 24th, myself, Commissioner Cooper, and Vice Chair Aaron Jasper spoke to City Council to advocate for Hastings Park to be governed by the Park Board. The Vancouver Charter is very clear, and it states in section 4.88, the board should have exclusive possession of and exclusive jurisdiction and control of all areas designated as permanent public parks of the city. Hastings Park is our Stanley Park of the East. And under Park Board governance, Hastings Park could reach its full potential by providing greater access to our green space, creating new recreational and revenue generating opportunities, just as we have in Stanley Park with our restaurants and all of our different amenities and services. This does not mean that there's not room for the P&E. The fair is a historical part of our city, and it's a part of Hastings Park. But Park Board governance would ensure that we have a fair and a park, and not a park and a fair. I am hopeful that City Council will decide tomorrow to give our independently elected Park Board the ability to govern Hastings Park, as is legally set out in the Vancouver Charter. I would like to thank members of the community, including the Hastings Park Conservancy, Friends of Hastings Park, the Hastings Community Association, and the Confratellanza for your continued tireless advocacy of this park. Thank you very much.
We also have a number of political municipal organizations that support Park Board governance, and I'd now like to call on Anita Romaniuk, who represents the Committee of Progressive Electors and who is a former Park Board Commissioner.
Yes, I'm also on the executive of COPE, so I speak on their behalf as well. Hastings Park has actually always been called a park. Even in the years from 1910 until 1973, when the Vancouver Exhibition and its successor, the PNE, were there, they referred to it as Exhibition Park. They knew it was a park. And in the first few decades, they had public access. There was a picnic area, there were golf links, and the ravine was still a natural area. This began to change in the 1950s when the PNE started looking for building space. They filled in the ravine, and effectively public access became very difficult, if not impossible. There were increased complaints from the public. Things like the boat show would knock minor hockey off its schedule. And in 1973, the province effectively took over control of the PNE and of course started appointing its board. In the 1990s, the province worked with the Park Board and started to move towards more public access to the park, and you've got the areas that we have today, Behind Gardens, sanctuary, so the ravine is coming back. And that was a trend welcomed by COPE, but more importantly, welcomed by the community that lives around it, and also usually nature and other groups who enjoy the more natural areas of the park. And it's not finished yet, of course. The master plan provides for expansion of the public areas. When I was a park commissioner, that was 2003 to 2005, we always referred to a fair as a park, as Commissioner Duchanova does today. The idea was that the PNE would still be there. It would be a tenant. The fair would go on, supported the Park Board, but it was a park and there would be increased public access and use of the park. There is a big worry if you don't have a directly accountable board running the park with governance, that its interests will supersede those of any area that isn't profit-making, because they have to be financially sustainable. They have to be. That's part of how they run things. They can't continue to run things if they're not. And we can already see, as people mentioned, things like fishing, fishing license, that when we promoted PNE, and you wonder, well, what's next? So what we really need is governance being given to a publicly elected body that is directly accountable to the people, and then you know that people's best interests will be represented, or they will hear very strongly from the people if they're not representing them. And as having been a park commissioner, I can assure you that if the public doesn't like something, they will let you know. So I urge council to give governance to the park board, and then we can work on more public access to this park, but still have the PNE and the racetrack here, because they are valued by members of the public as well. Thank you.
Dave Passon, who is here representing the new team, municipal group, and I believe it's the Electors Action Movement. Dave Passon.
Thank you. Thank you all for attending, and it's nice to see Commissioner DiGenova and Commissioner Cooper here today. It's nice to see that the Park Board has put aside political differences to do what's best for the area and for the city. And I think that's a critical factor here. The Park Board recognizes what this can be. It can be a unique enterprise, combination of enterprise, recreation, solitude, nature, and environment that can be a model that can be used not only for the city but for the province and the country. And I think what team was formed was to advocate to allow areas to have a say in a project such as this. We're standing in a lovely area, and I'd like to thank also the Confratellanza for the foresight to raise the funds to build such a beautiful project. I think what we have is a unique opportunity in our history to create a facility and a recreation facility and a park for the east side of Vancouver and for Vancouver that'll rival Stanley Park for tourism, for solitude, for a place that people come to enjoy. And that's critical. I'm an area resident. I walk my dog through this park, and as I look around, it's made a lot of changes over the years, but it needs a lot more. It needs to be a place where people can come to enjoy, play football or soccer, or just come and fly a kite, to read, be able to enjoy a creek running through, to enjoy nature. We need that on the east side of the city. We need that in the city, period. And I think it's critical that we all get behind the current Park Board and urge Mayor Robertson and his Vision Councillors to support the Park Board in this endeavor. Who better than the Park Board to plan a park? City Council certainly doesn't. The representative on the P&E Board certainly doesn't. The Park Board does. And I urge each and every one of you to support Commissioner DiGenova, Commissioner Cooper, and the Vision Park Board commissioners. Write the mayor, phone the mayor, put pressure on the mayor, and urge him to return this to Park Board jurisdiction where it should be. Thank you very much, and I'd like to thank you all for coming this morning.
We also have regrets from the Neighborhoods for Sustainable Vancouver, who are very much in support of Park Board governance, as well as the Green Party of Vancouver, and they have sent this statement. The Green Party of Vancouver Board of Directors unanimously passed a motion reaffirming the party's position that the governance body for Hastings Park be the Vancouver Board of Parks and Recreation. Green Party Councillor Adrienne Carr has met with concerned citizens and voiced her opinion at public meetings held during the Hastings Park Governance Review. When Council deliberates and votes on the governance structure of Hastings Park on Thursday, August 1, Councillor Carr is prepared to promote and support the community's call to put the Park Board in charge of governing Hastings Park. And our final speaker today is someone who is very, very familiar with this park, who lives in the area, who is representing the school that is across the street that uses this park on almost a daily basis. So I'd like to welcome David Bornman from the West Coast Christian School.
Well, it's so good to have everybody out today and see such a united thought from all the different organizations. Our students come here almost daily and use the park and enjoy it very much, especially the Italian gardens, and thank you for creating that. I just want to give you 3 really concise reasons why the Parks Board really should be given the governance of the park. And to make clear that we're talking about a governance issue. We're not talking about a fair versus something else issue. We're talking about governance. And the 3 reasons are this, that first of all, there's the legal status of our land. This is permanent parkland. And according to the charter, it is needing to be governed by the Parks Board. In fact, if the City Council decides, after 10 years of planning that's gone on, if they decide to give this park to anything other than the Parks Board, you're actually decommissioning its status. And that would require provincial decisions to do so. There were provincial decisions in 2003 regarding the P&E Enabling Act. That's to do with the liability of the city for how this property gets used. But the status of the property was never changed. It's still permanent parkland, and according to the charter, it must be the Parks Board. The second reason is practicality. How does it work to give the park to one of its tenants to manage? There are many, many users here. In fact, before the Empire Bowl was taken away 3 years ago, which still has not been returned, there was 27 sports groups using that field. There is the Giants who use the hockey rink. There's different rentals that go on. All of those revenue streams are continuing to come into this property, but to take one of those streams, the fair, and give one tenant governance will not work. The other problem with the practicalities is that the current plan that staff has put forward to council does not account for 20% of our park. The racetrack and the casino operate unaccounted for in the plan that's put forward to council by the staff and KPMG consultants. So it's very important that we have one governor who can be objective, that all users and all tenants can go to. And the last reason that it needs to be Parks Board is a financial reason. Often people think that we don't have the money to do anything but the P&E. Actually, that's ludicrous. If Parks Board is in charge, all of the revenue streams are still there. The current uses can still be used the same way. It's simply a different governing body, and a governing body that comes with our tax dollars. Rightfully, some of our tax dollars should go to this portion of the city as well. It is one of our parks. So our school would be very much in support of, we need to remain with Parks Board governance. This was planned over the last 10 years to host a fair in the park, and we should not give the park to a tenant who's a 17-day fair. Thank you.
And thank you for delaying your holiday leaving time to be here.
2 hours.
I'd like to thank everyone here for coming today. This is a very, very historic moment in the history of Hastings Park. Tomorrow, the City Council will decide. We know that last week they could have decided, and they did not. And we hope that they are giving this that important second thought, and that tomorrow we will hear that they too agree that the Park Board should be in charge. We hope that's the case, and we know that all of the wide support that the people here represent, and the fact that there is no threat to the PNE in the Park Board governance, all of those reasons are compelling for the City Council to make the right decision. Let's be there tomorrow to see that they do. Thank you.